Hi there, I am Jay Walker and I am the Agitated Ecoist. This is part of my climate change series, and today I'm going to talk about carbon taxes. Before I get to that, I'm going to ask a couple of questions and provide a bit of information. The same questions and information I provided in others, so if you want to skip forward, feel free to do that. My questions are this: is anybody concerned about the climate change that's affecting us now? The things that we see on the news constantly, hear about on the radio, that we watch on TV, that we see on the internet. Are folks thinking about that as we move forward into a short and medium term future, about how those trends are going to continue to play out? Okay, now the information. In a June 27th article in The Economist magazine, Munich Re, a large insurance company, calculated that the number of climate-related disasters had risen by about 3 to 4 times over a baseline in the early to middle 1980s. This includes things like the generational drought affecting California and much of western North America, the forest fires and wildfires that we see on TV constantly, floods such as the one we saw in Calgary in the recent past, hurricanes, landslides, heat waves, changes in the monsoon in India that could affect as many as 1.2 billion people. All things of this nature. These are the things that Munich Re is talking about. If this trend continues of rising climate disasters, then we can expect that in just 3 decades from now, the number of climate-related disasters will have climbed to something like 10 to 15 times over that 1980s baseline. And by about 6 decades from now, or about 60 years out, it'll be 30 to 60 times higher. 30 to 60 times higher than a 1980s baseline. I wonder how many of us think that that sort of trend line is going to result in a sustainable ecosystem, an ecosystem that supports human beings, as well as the other species on the planet that we share this planet with. I wonder if you think that. Mr. Harper, as our prime political leader, has done very little on the tough climate file during his nearly 10 years in office. He has ignored it where possible, minimized it where practical, and submarined it when viable. Mr. Harper, as we can tell through his commercials, thinks that enough seniors will ignore the responsibility to help fix this mess in favor of income splitting or pension splitting. Mr. Harper also thinks that many young mums and dads are going to ignore their children's long-term future and long-term well-being on this planet as their life unfolds over the next 30 to 60 years. He thinks they're going to ignore that in favor of a child tax care benefit today. And he apparently thinks that teasing Mr. Trudeau about his age, a pretty similar age to when Mr. Harper was first elected into office as the Prime Minister, is somehow solid leadership. In short, Mr. Harper appears to think that enough of us are going to vote in favor of his Hostess Twinkies program, rather than getting on with the tough task of voting for someone who will lead us through the climate crisis era that we're now in. Mr. Harper has said that carbon taxes are job killers. But does he not realize that climate-related disasters are a carbon tax, and they are also job killers, even more so than explicit carbon taxes? Does he not realize that forest fires, destroying forests and mills, kill forestry jobs and forestry communities, and they cost a lot of tax money to fight? Does he not realize that flooding, like that experience in Calgary with people evacuated, businesses closed and ruined, people's homes damaged, and insurance premiums increased, are a tax on people's wallets and purses? Does Mr. Harper not realize that droughts like we're having drive down farmers' incomes and drive up people's grocery bills? Does Mr. Harper not realize that this is a tax on people's purses and wallets? Well, I say newsflash to Mr. Harper. We are all currently paying a carbon tax, but it's just not the one that helps us move away from damaging carbon fuels. I beg you, Mr. Harper, look to the future. Think about that. Humorist James Thurber once said, "Let us not look back in anger, nor forward in fear, but around in awareness." Let us not look back in anger, let us not look forward in fear, but let's look around in awareness. I ask you to let that awareness guide you as you step into the voting booth on October 19th. I'm asking us all to gather up our courage and vote for a leader who will coax us into better systems and a vision of the future that sees change as needed, possible, and practical. #Harper, just not willing. Thanks very much.